is all about the information in this book. I got you, Amy. So years ago, I started doing book study years ago for leadership. And this is a book that I used in my leadership book study with a corporation. And it had a great success with everybody. I do have a degree in counseling. I love the love languages. And when I found the languages of appreciation in the workplace, I thought, wow, this is fantastic. We can do so much with our clients. All right, so we're going to go through all of the five. I don't know if any of you have read this book before or even know it existed before signing up for class. So it is definitely interesting. And everybody here, we have five presenters today that are going to share with you each of the subjects. So as soon as Colleen gets hers up.
Andy, can you show the book cover again? Is it the title of this session? Is that, yeah, okay. It's the
Oh,
title of this session that we're doing.
well, kind of. The five languages of appreciation in the workplace.
Appreciation in the work. Okay.
Yep.
You can find a used copy at like thrift books or
Abe's books, yeah,
yeah.
all of those places where you can get it for a couple dollars. You probably can check it out at your
Yep.
library.
Yeah.
My name is Corinne. I'm an AFC, and I will be talking about the love language of quality time. So why don't we start with, whoops, some tech issues here. We figure it out as we go. So let's start with what is quality time? And quality time in a coaching or counseling relationship, that means giving your undivided attention to clients. And so it doesn't just mean that you're spending time together, breathing the same air. The goal is really to connect with the clients. And something to note about quality time is it's easy to think it's just one-on-one, that sort of working with just one person. But for some people, a dialect of quality time as a language is actually small groups. And so if you're a coach who offers small group coaching or counseling, this can be a really great way to connect with people who prefer that particular dialect of the language. So why is this important? Well, I think we kind of intuitively know this, but clients who feel heard are more likely to trust you and the coaching and counseling process. So by focusing on connecting with clients' experiences, you'll naturally have this more open dialogue. And I want to add to this slide that quality time, it doesn't have to take a long time. You can simply take a moment at the beginning of your meeting with someone and just check in. How are you doing? What's recently happened in your life? That can really make a big difference. And it might also guide you in adjusting your meeting agenda. Maybe a big difference is they have the exciting news of they're going to have a baby, but that can definitely change the trajectory of your meeting. What are some challenges in implementing quality time? Well, I know I just said quality time doesn't need to take a lot of time, but as financial coaches, we can sometimes feel that pressure of time constraints, especially if we work for an organization that says, you have half an hour with this. And that means that you're really tempted to just jump right into problem solving. Another challenge could be client expectations. I worked with an engineer client. He was not comfortable talking about anything besides numbers and spreadsheets. And so that taught me that some clients, they just want those quick answers and focusing just on the numbers. And if you ask them, tell me about your experiences with money in childhood, they might give you a look and say, how is this relevant? The last challenge with quality time is it could be too much of a good thing. Oftentimes, we're the only person that our client has really gotten to have an in-depth discussion about money with. And they have a lot to share. There's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of experiences. And I've encountered this where sometimes clients just don't want the meeting to end. They'll keep on bringing up new things and say, "Oh, but wait, before we log off, could I mention this one thing to you?" So here's a question for the audience. Have any of you experienced one of these scenarios before? And if so, how did you address these challenges? And feel free to unmute or drop a message in chat.
Well, I think too much of a good thing sometimes is you sort of have to redirect, you know, I appreciate you saying that or letting me know. Let's focus more on, the goal of. I think you have to pick your words wisely so they don't feel insulted, but also you have a schedule to keep and you're trying to accomplish something.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Amy. Another thing is sometimes at the start of a meeting, I'll just ask, is there anything really pressing on your mind? And hopefully that'll kind of help, you know, say, okay, this is what we should focus on first. And then, oh, I was going to talk about X, Y, and Z. I want to address what you brought up, but I also want to leave time for this other thing that we mentioned that we were going to be doing. Is that okay? Just to keep the momentum going. All right, so I realize I can't see the Zoom chat from here, but I trust that y'all put in some great answers and I'll respond to those when I'm done presenting. And so next slide. So how do we demonstrate quality time? Well, a really great way of doing this is to be a thought partner and make decisions together. Clients will often come in with their own ideas or they have experiences of what worked for them or, in particular, maybe what did not work for them. And where you can really add value here is helping them evaluate, okay, what sounds good going forward? What's going to fit in your life when you leave this office, virtual or in person, and the rubber hits the road, if you will. Solicit client thoughts. How do you think this would work for you? What are you thinking would work? Another thing that you could consider doing is offering short check-in meetings in between the scheduled ones. And these are also great for just having accountability and maintaining that momentum. And lastly, again, quality time doesn't require a lot of time, but for some clients, longer sessions are really going to resonate with them. Another way to demonstrate quality time is through active listening. It involves not just hearing what clients say, but also understanding their emotions and experiences. And this can definitely be tougher to do than you think. It's very easy to put on your superhero cape and swoop in to save the day. I have been very guilty of this. I'm not scared to admit. Recently, I had a first meeting with a client, and they asked me, how do I look up my credit score? And I immediately said, oh, you're going to go to annualcreditreport.com, download all three reports from all three bureaus. And I didn't take the time to actually ask or to say, I can absolutely help you with that. But first, I'm really curious what made you interested in finding out your credit score? And I think I really missed the opportunity to find out what was motivating them and what was going on in their life. All right, so some cute little bunny rabbit ears here. So active listening, what does that look like in action? Well, here's some nonverbal cues. And again, these can differ by culture. They might differ by the client that you're working with. Neurodivergent folks sometimes show up a little bit differently. But in general, you can show that you're giving your full attention by minimizing distractions around you and maintaining eye contact. Try to avoid interrupting clients and allow them to finish their thoughts before speaking or before responding. And this can also mean just pausing after your client has said something, because sometimes they're still thinking through what they want to say and they haven't yet verbalized it. So if you just allow them that space of a few moments, they might say, oh, and I also want to add this. I just thought about it. No one's asked me this before. And then lastly, some pacing, right? You can match their tone and pace to show that you're connecting with them, that you're empathizing with where they're coming from. And then there's body language like nodding and leaning in to demonstrate engagement. I'm seeing that from some of you right now, so thank you. And and so I'll just do a little bit of what we used to call in education, brain break, wiggle break. So how about for those of you who are on camera, show me a nonverbal cue that you're not listening. And I'll go first. I'll give an example.
Same one.
Same one. I'll pretend to sleep. Oh my gosh, Amy. All right. Well, thank you so much for participating. So, active listening in action, part two, it's really about those open-ended questions to encourage deeper sharing. And so, some examples here are, what are your top priorities? How do you feel about blank so far? What does this mean to you? What would need to happen for you to feel this meeting was time well spent? And our favorite, tell me more. So, why don't you share in chat your favorite open-ended questions to ask clients? Because I know that this is just the beginning of a list.
Yeah. Hey, you can double click on the chat and it should pop up.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
There you go. I know people forget about that.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that, Katie. Trish, really good example. Amy, yes. I love that curiosity-led question. How do you feel about that? Really good, Maxine. Megan, yeah, tell me about a time when. I love that. And it's kind of strengths-based too, right? We could be listing when a client did something really well. Tina, yeah. Yeah, that is definitely tough. So Tina asked, how do you do a good job looking at the person to see their reactions while the camera is in a different place, so then they feel like you aren't looking at them? And that's a nonverbal issue I'm not managing to resolve. Um, so that is a little bit tough here.
I
I
moved
would
people's
say,
head right under the camera.
yeah. Yeah, so I would say for that, like there might be other ways that you could show that you're paying attention and listening to them. If moving the camera just isn't an option with your current desk layout. There's another thing that I'm about to get into on the next slide, so I'll close out with that, which is showing that we were listening, paying attention through reflection and paraphrasing. And that's just a way to confirm that we heard the client, we understand where they're coming from, and to validate their feelings. So here's kind of a general script that could be used, of course, adapted as needed or just use parts of it. But here, for example, I could say, oh, what I'm hearing is your main concern is your credit card debt. Is that correct? And it sounds like you're just feeling really overwhelmed about it. It makes it hard for you to sleep, and you're not sure where to begin. And you'd like to get this paid off before you get married. Did I understand all of that correctly? And this gives the client the chance to say, oh yeah, yeah, that's definitely it, or to add on to what they just shared with you. Well, it's that, but then there's also this other competing demand I have. So we're towards the end of the presentation, but this is an engagement activity. I am going to ask people to just comment in the chat or unmute. And this is a what if. So let's say, what if you work for a nonprofit that's offering triage pro bono financial counseling? And their goal is to reach as many people as possible, which means that they put a time limit of 1 hour total per client engagement. And you'll be seeing a client soon, and all you know is she feels, quote, stuck with her money. So how would you go about using the tools of quality time to assist her? And just a reminder here, it's not about the quantity of time, it's the quality of time. So I'll open up to discussion. Oh, and it's fine to take a moment to think. I know this might be a tough question.
That is the hard part is people feel like they have to fill the space with sound, and it's okay to have time to think about. You have maybe send a questionnaire ahead of time to get some of the busy work out of the way.
Yeah, that's such a good suggestion, Cynthia.
I think sometimes too, stating to the client, you know, we have an hour. I want this to, for you to get the most out of this. And kind of verbally talking about the time that you have. And I think you had already suggested, like, what do you want to get out of this, or what's your number one goal for today?
Yeah, Trish, she just had a really great comment here. Can you tell me what's your definition of being stuck? I love that. Herbie, yes, direct. What does stuck mean to you with your finances? Tell me the top three things that are your main concerns. And Katie asking, what would make you feel the most relief by the time we conclude our conversation? I love that as well. I think that also gets to this idea that we might not be able to resolve our clients' issues in an hour, but we can definitely make them feel heard and moving in the right direction. Oh my gosh, this is all so great. Thank you for sharing. Would represent success to you today? Yes. Pauline, what are some of your current challenges with your finances? Y'all could be teaching this instead of me. All right, so let me conclude and get ready to pass the baton. So Katie, heads
Colleen.
up.
Colleen,
So
we're going to go to
yeah, or
Colleen.
Colleen. Yes, that's right. So in conclusion, engaging quality time, it's crucial for building trust and strengthening those client relationships. And it allows you to better understand their personal goals and needs. I want to say thank you all for being here this Saturday again. You've been a great audience, lots of participation. And I'm going to pass the baton to Coach Colleen next.
It's just going to take me 1 second to share
Nope,
my
that's
worksheet
fine.
3. I just have to change my border. Ooh. There we go. All right, Colleen, you are up.
Okay. And I can't see. My Zoom. Yeah. All right. So the 5 languages of appreciation. I was supposed to go first. I thought I'd give a little overview quickly. So I've kind of mixed up all of them. But the 5 languages of appreciation is a book that we all collaborated, read, and took notes. It was written by Gary Chapman and Paul White, and it's really important to understand your appreciation language as well as your clients so that you can interact and help them better. The 5 consist of words of affirmation, which is the one that I'm going to be focusing on, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, and appropriate physical touch in a professional setting. Something that I found interesting is a whopping 46% of individuals most frequently prefer words of affirmation as their primary language of appreciation. It is important to understand each language as well as each client uniquely in order to convey appreciation in the most impactful way. Also consider that it is rare that a person will fall under only one of these categories. So it might be beneficial to utilize other languages in addition to their preferred language to most effectively communicate your appreciation. The importance of words. Words are incredibly important as they are the fundamental tools for communication, thought, shaping our understanding of the world. They enable us to express ideas and emotions, build deeper relationships, and they're the foundation of human connection. Let's see. The simplest way to express appreciation is to positively remark on something the intended recipient did or said. Are the words that you're using to express your appreciation positive, uplifting, and encouraging? It's also important to note that how you say things is very important. Are you supporting your praise? Voice inflection, does it sound genuine? Words are so innocent and powerless as they are, as standing in a dictionary. How potent for good and evil they become in the hands of one who knows how to combine them. And I did not write who said that quote. I'm sorry. Remember, true appreciation is not a blanket statement. Personalize it to the individual so that it is perceived as meaningful. The difference between recognition and appreciation. Recognition kind of focuses on what people do and celebrates specific achievements and contributions, and are often tied to performance or outcomes. Whereas appreciation is about valuing the person themselves, their worth, dedication, the positive attitude, and how they contribute to the group goal. Both recognition and appreciation are important for thriving in a professional setting. Recognition motivates people to achieve goals and perform well. Appreciation fosters a sense of belonging, strengthens relationships, and contributes to overall satisfaction and well-being. Both elements are crucial for creating a positive and productive environment where each feels valued and motivated to succeed.
Ready for the chart?
Yes. Okay. Employee appreciation or client appreciation has significant positive return on investment, impacting areas such as experience, culture, and outcomes within the client setting. It leads to increased engagement, productivity, and client loyalty, while also reducing the risk of somebody not showing up or increased recruitment costs on your end as the counselor. Let's see. Improving levels of praise and recognition increases productivity and revenue 10 to 20%. Increasing frequency has increased experience ratings by 11% at some places. When leaders fail to give earned recognition and praise, they actually undercut the value of those individuals. Additionally, while giving praise and recognition has an obvious positive effect on the recipient, studies have found that there is a positive benefit to the individual that is giving appreciation of increased happiness for up to a month later, sort of like a full circle domino effect. When your client feels valued, they are more likely to show up for their appointments, less turnover, and more loyalty. Higher customer satisfaction ratings, greater productivity and meeting preparation, and follow through on the steps. They feel supported and are more driven to reach or exceed their financial goals. This increases profitability of the AFC because you are more likely to continue services and potentially receive valuable referrals. And with that, the overall appreciation experience comes back full circle, which of course increases the happiness of all involved. How and where to affirm appreciation. So there's different ways to show appreciation. First, like, you want to recognize and acknowledge the good. And in doing so, you can also reflect on any challenges that the client may have overcome to meet that goal. You can express appreciation verbally with a simple thank you, or you can go more in detail about exactly what you're thanking them for. Like, you've reached your goal. Thank you for doing your homework. Thank you for bringing the requested documents, something as simple as that. Written expressions, you can write thank you note or emails to let them know that you're thankful for their contributions. You can ask a client to keep a gratitude journal, so what they appreciate, what they're thankful for, so that they can reflect back on it. Words of affirmation encompasses a wide range, most used and received appreciation language. Remember, while this may be someone's preferred language, private versus public recognition preference will be unique to the individual. They absolutely want to know that they or their achievements matter and are valued. They may not be able to appropriately receive the intended praise if they are put on the spot publicly due to embarrassment, or maybe they just like to keep it private. In contrast, others may be motivated by the public gesture if they are more competitively driven. Everybody looks bored. I'm sorry. To express appreciation professionally, be genuine and specific about the contributions, provide context for the impact, choose the right avenue, like email, a handwritten note, verbal expression, and do it at an appropriate time. Don't wait a long time, because it won't feel as sincere if you don't do it right away. Consider the level of formality and personalize the message for greater impact. Reinforce the appreciation and keep the message concise. Oh, I'm trying to match the slides. Like, I skipped
And
like 3 of
the
them.
slides look different on my phone than they do on the computer. So it's
Oh,
interesting.
wow.
So they didn't come through very well. But just tell us.
Okay. Appreciation, regardless of setting, office, remote, hybrid, is crucial for fostering a positive and productive environment. It involves recognizing and valuing employees' contributions and efforts, which can significantly boost morale, engagement, and loyalty. Depending on how or where your client meetings are conducted, may have a varying method of showing appreciation. Words of affirmation, in my opinion, is most likely one of the easiest ways, because all of them involve communication. Your meetings, you're communicating with your client, whether it's via email or Zoom or in person. So generational differences exist in how individuals respond to and prefer words of affirmation. Younger generations like Gen Z and millennials often value words of affirmation more and may expect more frequent and specific positive feedback. Whereas older generations, such as baby boomers, may prioritize quality time or acts of service over verbal praise. They're a little grittier, tougher. Understanding these differences is crucial for effective communication. From baby boomer to Gen Z, Alpha, even possibly. Daily, we have the opportunity to interact with individuals born in varying generations, each possessing very different viewpoints on certain topics. Younger employees tend to have a different worldview. They tend to want to contribute something meaningful or be recognized or valued for who they are. And they're less likely to do things solely for money, whereas older generations, they've experienced life, they've experienced, some of them even like the Great Depression, and their main motivator sometimes is money, and providing for their families, and not so much on personally being recognized for things.
Are you ready to go to cautions?
I am on number 13, whichever one.
They don't have numbers.
The change. I'm on the change one.
Yep.
Your appreciation language is mostly stable. It typically tends to remain stable. However, variations can make, and situational factors can cause this to change. Like life circumstances, stages can influence how someone may want to be supported and encouraged. During intense circumstances of life, stress, it is not uncommon for a preferred primary language to shift. Generally, quality time and acts of service become more prominent in times of stress over words of affirmation. Next slide. While words of affirmation are generally positive and can boost confidence and relationships, it's crucial to use them mindfully and authentically. Overuse, insincerity, or using them to manipulate can be harmful. Remember to be specific and genuine and focus on actions that back up your words. And don't overdo it. People can tell usually if you're being insincere or manipulating them, like saying nice things to potentially get something out of it. Words of affirmation are most effective when they are authentic, specific, and delivered with genuine care and consideration for the other person's needs. They can also be powerful tools for overcoming challenges by boosting self-confidence and creating a positive mindset. When you affirm your capabilities and take action, you create a positive feedback loop that reinforces your belief in yourself and your client and your ability and theirs to overcome obstacles. Things such as, I am resilient and bounce back stronger from setbacks, or even being worthy of happiness and success. Applying languages in financial planning, it's important to identify client preferences, personalize the communication, and incorporate the appreciation in each client meeting or a follow-up to it. Send handwritten notes, offer practical assistance, celebrate milestones, recognize referrals, and seek feedback. It's important to understand how your client feels, if they feel appreciated, and if not, make adjustments so that your client is always feeling appreciated when they're in your space. Identifying your own language of appreciation is also important, and it gives you the ability to understand each type, and so that you can apply it to each of your clients. A good way to determine your language is you can look at what you request of others, how things make you feel. Listen to your complaints when you're complaining. What is it that's bothering you? It's probably an unmet need. And explore how you're encouraged, what forms of appreciation genuinely motivate and inspire you. I've included a link to the MBA inventory as well
I sent
as
that to everybody. Yeah.
a copy of the book, and the link on Amazon where you can find it. It's relatively cheap. I think it was under $20, and I don't know, just valuable insight to use, not only in financial planning practice, but also just in general relationships with anybody. So
Thank you, Colleen. Sorry for the hurdles today.
no, I'm sorry. Anybody have questions or?
And we are on Katie, right? Is that who's next?
It's me.
Thank you, Katie.
Let's do it. All right. I need to make sure I get this straight. I'm gonna do a slideshow. All right. Do you guys see just the acts of service screen?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Katie Ubler, and we're going to be talking about acts of service as the language of appreciation. This one really centers around showing care through helpful actions, not just words. And so, of all the love languages, it has the potential to, I think, put the most burden on us as financial counselors. But honoring the clients whose language of appreciation is acts of service. If we do it with intention, this allows them to feel seen and appreciated. And I think that that really puts us one step closer to more, influential and impactful coaching. So let's talk about what are the individual characteristics of this client. Actions speak louder than words for this person. They appreciate the time back that they get from not having to do something because we maybe do it for them. And so this could be something like filling out a complex financial form that they just have zero interest in doing. This type of personality, according to the book, does not seem to be the best at speaking up if they feel overwhelmed. So if you do offer help, they generally respond well to that. This person is typically generous with their resources, and that includes the time that frees up from not having to do things they don't want to do. And they often show love in the same way that they receive it. And that can apply to all of these languages of appreciation. So for this person, that can look like they might research ways to save money on everyday expenses. They may offer their partner, hey, I'll manage bill payments for the household, or I'll create the budget. Anything that they believe could be beneficial to their partner, even if they're not good at it or they don't necessarily want to do it. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I want to sprinkle in just a little bit of an activity. Sometimes part of the challenge as a financial counselor is just to first understand what our client's love language is. So we don't always have the quiz at hand, or maybe they don't want to take it, right? And so there is a free version of the quiz, but it might not be practical. But there are questions that we can ask if they haven't taken it, to understand more about them and how do they best feel appreciation. And so before we cover some of the questions that I will share, I'd like to hear from you. Write in the chat what you would ask a client to confirm their love language is acts of service without asking them out. While you're doing that, I'm going to try to find the chat real quick.
I think you could do either or, which is kind of similar to the quiz. Like, do you feel more appreciated if someone does something for you or tells you how thankful they are? So you could kind of mimic the quiz with the either or question.
Yep, you got it. That's a great one.
Did you get your chat up?
I did. Okay, so thank you, Corey. So tell me about a time you felt appreciated. What happened? Yes, exactly. How do you feel appreciated at work? That's a really good one. Yeah, how do you feel seen, right? When you do something at work, what is your preference? Because you might find out that this actually isn't, acts of service is not their love language. Melody says, I would ask them if they would want someone to make their coffee for them or if they would rather have someone buy a coffee for them. That's such a simple one. I love that. I
I
love
would
that. I'm
I
totally
would
stealing
say
that.
I would say something about, do you want me to do the budget for you, fill in the budget form for you, or do you want to do that on your own? I mean, make it
Yeah.
specific to financial.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be financial forms. It could be, maybe they have a kid who's going off to college and they are so overwhelmed with like the ability to get scholarships and things like that. And so you can cater your offer to say, hey, would it help you if I sifted through this on your behalf? Or would you just prefer to do that to be really intimate with that? Like that's a great way to find out. All right. Thank you guys for these. Keep them coming. As you're interested, we'll have I think one other activity a little bit later. So let's talk about how can we identify a client who has this love language. And so we can ask, would you find it helpful if I prepared resources or did some research for you between sessions? So kind of what we were talking about. Do you appreciate it when someone notices you are overwhelmed and steps in to help without being asked? So this is one where, so just a little bit of a funny story. This is my love language, or my language of appreciation, which is why I chose this one. And I often do try to show my love through this. And that manifests in me taking over things for my husband who does not appreciate it whatsoever. And so we've really had to work on, no, this is how I'm showing you love. And he's like, no, I want to do it myself. And so I think it's a really relevant question to say, would you appreciate if I took something off of your plate? Because not everybody would. What kind of actions or gestures make you feel cared for in your personal or professional life? How are you feeling about everything on your plate? Are you overwhelmed? Because this person tends to take on a lot more than they can actually handle because they're trying to show that they can do all the things, and that's how they show that. How important is it to you that people share responsibilities or help lighten your load? When thinking about past experiences, do you remember feeling especially valued when someone did something practical to help you? Are you more likely to trust someone who takes actions or someone who offers advice and encouragement only? So these are just some examples I wanted to provide. take a screenshot if you would like. I'm sure Andy will send out the presentation afterwards as well. So how do we integrate this into our coaching? Shifting some things around behind the scenes. A person with this love language, they may take charge of all financial responsibilities, acting out of their own love language, right? But not everything may be their strong suit. And so we as counselors can seek to understand where their strengths exist and help make up the difference. So, for example, maybe they have known that they need to get a will. They just had a baby and they have no idea where to start. And they've been so busy with changing diapers, right? They're not even, they would love to think about that, but literally they're just trying to like function and keep their eyeballs open. And so this person would appreciate you doing the research to understand the next steps for creating a will. Maybe you can tell them what website they can go to. Do you have a contact that you can provide to them? What is the approximate cost of getting a will? What types of questions will they need to think through ahead of time? That can be one of the hardest parts of getting a will, right? It's like you really have to come to terms with the fact that you're not always going to be here. And sometimes that's really hard on people. So these are just a couple of ways that we can identify um, an area where it might not be their strong suit at this point, and we can lessen their load. There are also financial apps that really embody the core principle of this love language. Helpful actions that reduce burdens and make life smoother. The term automation, this can include setting up automated savings or alerts for upcoming bills, helping to prevent missed payments or surprises. From my experience, when you have a couple that you are counseling, if one of those people alone carries the load of debt payoff, this to them can feel very isolating and unfair. And so I think it's good for us as financial counselors to find ways to involve both partners in understanding how much debt needs to be paid off and finding strategies for tackling that together so the one person doesn't feel like they have everything on their plate. Likewise, as counselors, we've got a lot of ways we can make our clients' jobs easier. That can be through creation of free resources or pre-filling out forms on their behalf. The person whose love language is acts of service is going to appreciate this effort. And as a bonus, this also it can benefit our own business because in some instances, once we have created, for example, a checklist or a free resource for one client, it can just be repurposed for future clients too. So again, let's hear your ideas on other innovative ways that this client can be acknowledged and feel seen. I'd like for you to share some ideas in the chat or feel free to come off of mute. What are ideas that you've got from this presentation or you've used in the past with your clients on things that you could do for someone whose language of appreciation is acts of service? I've got a couple more ideas that I haven't mentioned. I'm just curious if you guys can think of any. If not, I will jump into my other ones.
I like the whole idea of just doing things with people, like walking them through the steps of Power Pay, for example, or
Yeah.
so, what else?
Things that are practical that can help their everyday life. Corey says, offering to read and summarize their long-term care. Oh, wow, the chats are coming in. Sorry, I lost it. Read and summarize their long-term care hybrid life insurance quotes for them. Oh, yes. Yeah, anything that will take the doldrums out of all of this. Nobody likes reading insurance policy documents. Exactly. That's what I was thinking as I read that, including me. But I would do it for a client. Okay, Trish says, would it help if I contact you for a next meeting? Yeah, show them that we're going to follow up with them. We're not going anywhere. We're here to support them, right? Jenny says, offer to be on the phone call with them to lenders. I love that. I think that it can feel so lonely sometimes when you're in such debt. And so to just be that helping hand, just to be there and maybe offer questions to the lender that they wouldn't have thought of, I think that would be huge. Cynthia says, I made a brochure on a local home buyer support programs. Many of my clients want to purchase but are overwhelmed. Yeah, so that can give ease to that process that right now, gosh, this industry, it can feel very, very overwhelming, especially to a first-time home buyer. Amy says, send a reminder or notes from the meeting. Yep, absolutely, as follow-ups. Pauline says going above and beyond. Yes, and so many different ways we can do this for them. And then Colleen says setting up auto payments. Yep, this is one of the ways that we can just make life so much easier. A couple other examples that I had written down are you can perform job comparisons. So this is where maybe they have a job opportunity in maybe two different states, right? And so we can just do the comp on like it's so much more than salary. What does the relocation package look like? What are the home opportunities? Will you like your boss? You can go really deep with this type of comparison. You could do the same thing if somebody has a child who is going to college and they're trying to decide which one to go to. You could help them with the college comparison. Like Andy mentioned, we can pre-fill calculators to show debt payoff abilities if we're using PowerPay or other calculators. We can help them decide which healthcare plan they want to choose at work based on life changes, like having a baby. And like Corey said, we can review policies and provide a summary on their behalf because who wants to do that? And then Andy said doing a check in between appointments. Yeah, that really shows that, hey, we're here, right? Because I think sometimes our clients can start to really, I think they feel really inspired when they talk to us. But when we engage them outside of a scheduled appointment, I think that can really, really go a long way.
Yeah. How's that homework going? Do you need any help? That kind of check in.
You've helped me with that and stay motivated. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. So lastly, I'd like to review a few ways we can integrate what we've learned about this acts of service language within our own practice. So we've got tailored counseling. This is where we are able to customize our approach to our specific client depending on their responses. So for example, simplifying administrative tasks. This could look like prepping documents, pre-filling forms, or summarizing financial options. Dividing financial responsibilities can look like providing reminders for deadlines or tracking debt payoff progress or performing a financial look back and presenting actionable next steps. And lastly, practical support could include breaking down complex tasks into simple checklists, really anything additional that you find that you might make your client's life easier and allow them to feel seen and supported. And then we have ongoing support. So this is regular check-ins that will help the client feel genuinely cared for, less stress, because it's a reminder that you as their counselor are actively helping and making the financial process easier. And that really serves as motivation for your client. So with that, thank you for your time. Thank you for your engagement. Oh, I see one last comment from Colleen, and it says, help them create future purchases list and share any deals or coupons that you may know about, depending on whether their spending plan allows it. I love that. That's a really great idea. I've never done that before.
I
Yeah.
want to add to that, Colleen, like it triggered me because I reviewed a client's spending and then I offered like 10 suggestions because I saw they traveled a lot. And I'm like, have you considered getting the Chase Sapphire card to get miles points? Oh, they took a flight on Southwest. I asked, do you fly that often? Because they had to pay for bags. If you have the credit card, you get free baggage. And you also get a free companion fare every year on Alaska. So they could have, I added up how much they could have saved for the free bag and a companion fare. So it was just offering these suggestions of ways to, you know, get more bang for their buck, I guess.
Yeah,
It
I
made
love
me
that.
think about I saw Prime Day being advertised and how you can, if you do have a big purchase or something like that, you can put it in your cart now and look at what the price is now. And then when Prime Day comes, like I got a projector for my pool so we could watch shows and float for half price because I looked ahead of time and I said, oh, this costs too much money. And then on Prime Day, I checked again. I was like, oh, yeah, we're buying it.
I love that.
Um,
Delayed gratification pays off.
in addition to that, going above and beyond, like Andy sent in one of her sessions, a side gig opportunity for those clients who are wanting to earn an extra income, maybe sharing some of those ideas for helping them find out their talents and their skills that they could use and create a side gig opportunity. Finding out what the client needs and then helping them with that situation is, I think, going above and beyond.
Totally.
Or
Thank
for my
you.
Medicare clients, I would like help them with, they don't like to get on the phone with Social Security.
Mm.
And you know how that can be. And I don't have that time either, but just helping them with the steps on how to do that can help.
Yeah. Yeah. Even giving them a reality check of like the last time I was on with them, it did take 30 minutes. So, just plan on that, right? Like
Exactly.
any reassurance of like what they're going to face makes it a little bit less
What
scary.
to expect. Right. Expectations, what to expect in certain things. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for making this fun and for your engagement. And I'm going to pass the torch on to Brent and stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will share then. Can you guys all see my screen now?
Yep, it looks perfect.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm the fourth of five, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the appreciation language of tangible gifts. And tangible gifts is kind of got a lot of complexity to it, I guess I would say, and we'll go into a bit of that. But just to get started, by show of hands, I find that when it comes to gifts, it's kind of binary. There's people who are really great at gift giving and everybody else. How many of you guys consider yourselves to be like really good gift givers? Just by show of hands. Oh, great. Fantastic. Well, for the rest of us, this one can be a little bit difficult, but hopefully you'll get some tips out of this. So there's going to be a lot of participation in this. And also, I'm kind of taking it with the structure of like why, how, and what, just to make it very practical at the end. So starting with the why. And I'm going to ask you guys here to drop some ideas into the chat. So this is about your personal experience. And what I'd like for you to do is think of the most impactful gift that you've ever received in a professional setting. And to be a little bit more specific than just that, not from a friend who happens to work where you do for your birthday, but like a gift that you got because of something that happened at work. So I'll look in the chat here. A very nice purse. Wow. Okay. A bonus at work that was huge. Anyone else? Vodka. That's all. Alcohol's always a pretty safe gift. Cooling town. Okay, so these are great examples, and they are impactful. I mean, you can kind of see by what they are. Now I'm going to change it up a little bit. So it's the same core question, but with one change. What's the most expensive gift you've ever received in a workplace or professional context? Okay. $100 blanket, fancy sports tickets, my bonus, a bonus. Great, fantastic. And there's a little bit of overlap there, but as you probably noticed, it's not exactly the same. A lot of what you all said was most impactful was not necessarily the most expensive thing you've ever received. And impactful gifts don't need to be expensive. And that's maybe the first point of all of this is when we think of gifts, I think sometimes our mind automatically goes to, well, that's going to cost some money. And really impactful gifts don't always have to. Certainly you can, spend a lot, but you don't have to for the gift to be impactful. So two things to think about. And this is the first one is really the same with all of the appreciation languages is, you have to find the right language because if you give a gift to someone who their appreciation language is not gifts, it probably just won't mean that much to them. And then the second part is if the person's language of appreciation is tangible gifts, then in order for it to be valuable to them, it really has to speak to them. And so you have to get to know the person. And I'm going to come back to how we do that later in the presentation. So that's a little bit about the why. Now let's talk about the how. And so one thing that you can look at is milestone gifts. And we can break milestone gifts down into a couple of different ways. One could be after a specific interval of working together. So let's say that you have someone you've been working with and you kind of cross that magic 1 year mark. Maybe you would want to celebrate that if their language of appreciation is gifts through some sort of gift. And here I've just got it as an example, kind of a random example. Maybe it would be tickets to a local music festival that you think they might enjoy. So time is one way. Another way you can look at it is not so much by a fixed interval, but more like a fixed amount of progress. So let's say in this situation, you're working with a client who came to you because they were having trouble saving and they really wanted to save up for their kids' college education. And so you worked with them to develop a budget and a spending plan. And every month now they're putting a certain amount of money away toward their kids' college education later. And they have this aspiration that their kids can go to the University of Alabama, roll tide. So once they get to a certain amount, maybe you would want to then give them a gift that reflects it. So like in this case, I picked out like a hat, an Alabama hat. But the idea being making it a little bit more personal. And this one, is an interesting one too. We talked about it as a group. Is certificates of these milestones can be important for people whose language of appreciation is gifts. Now, a couple of things here. I mean, it has to be like a gift, so you cannot email them the PDF of congratulations, you saved up a certain amount of money. You want to present them with something. But certificates can go a long way for people whose major language of appreciation is tangible gifts. So now this is where I want you guys to play again. So in the chat, what are your ideas for a milestone gift for someone who recently paid off their credit card debt? So they came to you to develop a plan to pay off their credit card debt and they've done it. What might be a gift that you would think about doing for them? Chocolate credit card, great idea. Gift card, yep, okay. Warm cookies, yes, fantastic. So in this particular scenario, I gave you sort of the end goal that they hit, but I didn't really tell you about the person. And that makes it a little bit more difficult sometimes to do gifts, or at least to do them well, as the professional gift givers on the call could tell you. So that leads us to what's really important here, and that is personalization. So personalization, I think, is the difference between, succeeding and not succeeding when you're giving gifts. And so thinking about, some scenarios like, let's say that you're working with a client who has made a financial goal of saving up for an exotic trip somewhere, let's say to Japan. Maybe, in that situation, you could give them a travel guide when they save up either the full amount or when they get to a certain percentage of the amount to show that. Or the quintessential goal that when you do a budget for people and they see how much money they're spending on either having dinner out or having their daily coffee at Starbucks, and they say, wow, I had no idea I was spending that much. Luggage tag is a great idea too. That's very nice. Um, so they're saying, wow, I didn't know I spent that much money at Starbucks. I'm going to start drinking coffee at home. And let's say they make that plan, and as you guys are checking in on their budget, they're actually doing it. They're making progress. Maybe buy them some Starbucks beans for home that they can grind themselves. But again, it's that personalization. You're taking the time to listen, to hear what's important to them. So now I want to take that scenario that I gave you a few minutes ago, and I want to give you the personalized element and see what you might do for the gift instead. So now, what are your ideas for a personalized gift for someone who's recently paid off their credit cards and they've talked to you a lot about they're very interested in supporting local artists? What kind of personalized gift might you think about there?
A small donation in their name to the local arts community.
Perfect. Fantastic. Show tickets to a local art show. That's a good one too. Art show tip. Yeah. All those and so you can kind of see where I'm driving with all of this is it really kind of comes down to getting to know the person. And so that leads us into the final part of the presentation today, the what. Like how do we get practical with this now that we sort of know the kind of the thought behind it? So branded gifts, those are interesting, right? Because everybody, if they like gifts, certainly they'd like something branded, and this might be a chance to show off our brand. Well, maybe not regular branded gifts. Those actually are probably more for us for advertising than they are for them. So rather than kind of go the generic, gift like this, consider special gifts. And this idea actually is from Andy. Maybe instead of buying a mug that's got your brand on it, maybe buy them a mug or a glass or something to drink out of that doesn't have anything on it, and instead use something like these financial stickers. And they're not as good as Andy's stickers, but these are actually already done. And that link there is a live link. You can actually go and buy this sheet of stickers. But as you're making progress towards certain goals, they can earn stickers. So the gift is the mug that you put the stickers on, and then as you go, using these stickers to sort of motivate them to, as they hit their certain goals. One thing that always resonates with people, and this is even beyond, sort of the professional setting, but there's been a lot of psychological research done on the value of experiences as gifts. And so now those might be a little bit better for people we've been working with for a while, because these probably would tend to be a little bit more expensive than the things that we've talked about so far. But they could be tickets to a local sports event, to a local artist event, whether that's the art we've been talking about so far, whether it might even be like music. Give a card to their favorite restaurant is a really, really good one too, because that really shows them that you're listening and you're thinking about them. And if the group you're working for, if you guys would happen to have access to any exclusive, local events, or early access or things like that, those really can be powerful too, as something to share. So how do you know all of these things? How do you know what their preferences are? How do you know what their favorite restaurant is or what food they like? You got to ask. And maybe this becomes a part of your normal intake process. So in addition to, sitting down and talking about all of the financial goals, as you're getting to know them, ask some things like, what are some things that you like to do in your free time? Or who are some musical artists you like, or who are some sports teams you like, et cetera. And then find those things out and make a note of them. Now, as has been mentioned before in a couple of the other presentations, a lot of people, we sort of picked on engineers and IT people, they like to get down to business and do the numbers. So it may be a little bit more difficult in those situations, admittedly, but just ask. And if they're not going to tell you, they're not going to tell you. But if they do, then now you've got something to work with. You got a database. Now, there are some caveats around gift giving. And number one, just in general, in professional settings, gift giving is not as popular as it used to be. There's been, a lot of things sort of around anti-corruption that have come into play here. But again, we're talking about smaller gifts, and we are talking about your clients. So generally speaking, it won't be a problem. And most people will recognize that you're coming from a good place when you're giving a gift. But again, thinking about there's been quite a bit of research on gift giving done, and giving general gift cards can actually backfire. It's the same thing as if you give cash. You're essentially saying, I think you're worth this much. And if they think they're worth more than that much, then it actually turns out to be kind of a negative to them sometimes. Now, you heard me say earlier, with the gift card to their favorite restaurant, then why would I recommend that? And I think personalized gift cards are good. And so some of you guys mentioned gift cards earlier too. And again, I think not doing something general, or just, whatever chain restaurant happens to be at the little stand at Walgreens, but actually putting some thought into it, I think gift cards are fine. But just sort of that general gift card that you have at the ready to give out, probably those can be challenging for some people. And then finally, there's this sort of human wiring that we have, that high value gifts can be awkward, because now I feel the need to reciprocate. You gave me this, that was a lot. Wow. Now I've got to give you something. Now, to be honest, this is probably not super likely in the setting we're talking about and we're working in, but it can happen. And so everybody's threshold is going to be a little bit different. I might feel comfortable with someone giving me a gift up to $20. You might feel comfortable with someone giving me a gift up to $100. Just know that it's out there, and that's something to think about. So kind of summing all of this up, the key points from gift giving are: impactful gifts don't need to be expensive. You guys showed that, in the chat as well. The more specific the gift is, the better it is, because it shows that you are giving a gift to them, not just, you're giving a gift in general. And so finally, experiences are generally very well received gifts, and you almost never go wrong with that. So with that, I will stop sharing.
Thank you,
and
Brian.
Thank you, and hand over to Amy.
Okay, we tested this morning and I had some technical difficulties, so we'll try again with Zoom, and if not, Andy's gonna have to share for me.
Yeah. So. Hopefully it works this time. We all might need a Zoom update. I noticed there's been some changes in the chat format, so I wonder if they had an update that's messing us up. But we'll see. Glad everybody's still here. Seventh inning stretch, everybody. You got 15 minutes left.
I can tell it's not sharing.
It is not.
Okay, so Andy will have to share for me.
Oh, hang on. I tried to
One
share.
thing for Prince, I'm glad he said like Starbucks coffee beans to grind at home, because I was thinking I have so many Starbucks gift cards that I've gotten through things, and I thought, oh, maybe I wouldn't give that to a client because it might kind of trigger them, right, to go back to Starbucks if they've really curbed that. I think it could go either way, right? They might appreciate it because it's not their money they're spending. All right, let's get started. So I'm Amy Wolfstein. I'm going to talk about the language of appreciation at work for physical touch. And I picked this one because I was an HR manager in high tech in my former life. And as some of you might be thinking, for physical touch, how is this going to work? So let's talk about it. I'm going to talk about a little bit of a story. So over 15 years ago, when I had just started in HR, I met with a older male manager in the company cafeteria. Something that he said made me put my hand on top of his on the table in a consoling way. I don't even remember what we were talking about. But after the meeting, I thought I should not have done that. And of course, it's over 15 years later, and I'm still thinking about it. And that can be sometimes the power of touch. In this case, it could have been misconstrued, and it was probably way too familiar of a gesture for somebody I didn't really know very well. So, as I've already said, touch is controversial, and so much so that in the book and in the inventory for your motivation of appreciation, they took the physical part out because it's just kind of too nuanced. And it also happened to be the lowest rated for workplace interactions, but I think we still need to talk about it. The thing that I want you to really remember about physical touch is that in this context, it's not romantic and it's about making someone feel appreciated and respected. So why don't you type into the chat some appropriate touches that you feel would be okay in the workplace? Andy, this is a touchy subject.
I know. I thought that was funny.
I should have used that, darn it. Maybe next time. Yep, high five, pat on the back, these types of things are can be acceptable, but we'll talk about ways that they may not
And
be.
and when we were talking about this, I worked in a virtual environment for many, many years running a government program. And whenever we got together and whenever we go to conferences and we see each other, there's a lot of hugging going on. So, like I have one friend who's like, I'm not a hugger, but I know Andy is. So I'm going to give her a hug. You know what I mean? So it does happen. We're a very, very huggy crowd.
We'll talk a little bit about that even in the next slide. So to take it a bit further, we're going to talk about consent, culture, and awareness. So first of all, you have to know your recipient if you're the one giving touch. So physical touch is not universal. And what may feel respectful to one person could be evasive to another. I want you to put in the chat or off mute, has anyone ever hugged you or touched you when you didn't want that? And how did it make you feel? Icky? Probably a little off-putting, uncomfortable, and awkward. Yeah, side hug or the
Oh,
bro
we call
pat.
that a FU hug at our house.
Grossed out. Yeah. Really depends on who it is and what's happening. I want you to also think about for consent. You always want to get consent, but oftentimes people have a difficult time saying no. So they might actually give consent when they don't want to. So it's just something to be aware of. Also, with cultural awareness, a lot of cultures value personal space. And I want to go a bit beyond culture because you might want to think about people that are on the spectrum. They don't often like touch. They have sensory issues. They may also not use a lot of eye contact, so it might be hard to judge how they're feeling. Also, many religions do not allow unmarried opposite sex to touch or, um, you know, just religious or cultural things are things that you really should try to be aware of. And you may not know this about your client, so you're going to have to watch for some clues. Touch in this context should always be client led. You can look for client body language, think about their culture, and any preferences that you might be aware of. You can look for these cues by if they respond well to a smile, or do they lean in to hear what you're saying, pull back, maybe cross their arms. And if a client initiates touch with you, like a hug at the end of a session, you as the coach need to decide if you're comfortable in reciprocating and then being respectful if you decline. So when might you want to do a physical touch action? Every gesture that you do for physical touch needs to have a reason behind it. You should never just do it as a filler or out of habit. So some things you might want to do is for comfort, like we talked, you could do a pat on the back. A celebratory action is probably the most recognizable one, or acknowledgement for something. You can certainly ask your client if they would be okay with a handshake or a high five. I think back to the early days of COVID. I mean, people were elbow bumping or, tapping their feet together just, for germs. Like Andy said, you can say, I'm a hugger, but then kind of follow it up with, but only if you are. And then you should let them initiate the hug because you don't want to put pressure on them just because you may be a hugger that they should hug you back. Oftentimes with new clients, pretty normal in US culture to give a handshake to establish trust, celebratory, achieving goals, high fives, empathy moments. Oftentimes in coaching, people are talking about something that's, impactful or emotional for them. These are times where you might want to give that. And younger people might be more inclined to do a fist bump. I don't know if I could do that. It feels weird to me, but certainly if that was something my client was comfortable with, I could do it. Next, let's talk about when you should avoid physical touch. Anytime that you see a client show a sign of discomfort, and I talked about that could look like leaning back, folded arms, kind of pulling away, maybe even looking disengaged. You should also try to avoid physical touch when there's any power imbalance and or possibility of misinterpretation. I think in financial coaching, many of us learned that there often is a power imbalance as a coach, maybe appearing more like established or put together than the client. So I think you really want to be aware of that. And always, if there's any doubt, if you're not sure, choose a verbal affirmation or a nonverbal gesture like a smile or written praise. So let's talk a bit about physical touch in a virtual environment. You can use descriptive language to describe supportive gestures. You could say things like, hey, if we were in person, I'd give you a high five right now for meeting that goal. Or you could say, just imagine us shaking hands at the beginning of this meeting. These types of things can help evoke touch through conversation. How many of you on a Zoom call have done like the virtual high fives or sent a heart? So those are ways that you can do it through technology. And even gestures like reaching toward the camera. That feels a bit weird to me, but it can certainly help a client feel more seen and connected with you. And I think Brent talked about, mailing tangible items, a small meaningful gift, like a congratulatory card or, a motivational sticker, even tactile gifts like a pen or a notebook, they can track their spending. These kind of physical reminders give support and encouragement to your clients. Let's talk a bit now about physical engagement in the coaching practice. So, sensory rituals was a bit of a new one for me, but if you know that clients are going to be talking about something hard, you can encourage them to hold a comforting object, maybe like their favorite mug or a soft blanket. Other things that you could have them do, especially if it's in the office, like a stress ball or a fidget spinner. I think things that as coaches we might be more familiar with are money sorting, where you might use fake money or tokens to put things in categories for wants, needs, or debt. You can do a write and rip debt exercise, when somebody pays off a bill and they can tear it in half for closure. Using things like a touch point stone or object, where you're putting like coins, stones, something from one jar into another to show a transition or change. And then one of my favorite things, and I'm a more visual person, and this is visual and tactile, in my opinion, but doing something like a thermometer where they get to mark it off, especially for savings goals. I have my own tracker. This happens to be for a workout, but visually I get to see how many times I exercise, but I also get the, physical part of coloring in the box. So one of the things I think you've probably studied about is learning about your client's learning style, which can be visual, auditory, or kinesthetic and tactile. So for physical touch for your clients, that could mean actually holding money in their hand. You could have them hold the bills or tear them up when paid off. A lot of you are familiar with the envelope system, so you can actually have them write out the envelopes and then put the money in the envelopes as a way for them to learn and have that tactile feel. We've talked about power pay or budgets. Instead of you doing the work, is even in a virtual, have the client maybe type in the numbers if that appeals to their learning style. And this one was interesting that we talked about, and Katie talked a little bit about it, and even Maddie earlier today, but tangible investment types. So oftentimes people have a hard time with, just seeing a number on a screen. It doesn't feel very real to them. So they might be the type of a person that would invest in real estate, which is actual house or land. Maybe they want to collect coins or bullion. So this can be something that, represents for them, an actual investment versus just a number in a spreadsheet or in their account might not resonate the best with them. So here are the top things that I want you to remember from physical touch is always be respectful with physical touch and be mindful of your client. It can be a powerful tool for connection, but it is never required. Remember consent, context, and the client's comfort. You can try some tactile or kinesthetic coaching tools. And if touch is not their language of appreciation, affirm with words, gestures, and thoughtful actions. Does anyone have any questions?
Great job. Let me get our code up here. So that's for an hour and a half. I'll put it in the chat for you.